Welcome to Jazz Voices Live, where we're shining the light on great jazz vocalists from everywhere. And today we're chatting with London's own vocalist, Fiona Ross. Welcome to Jazz Voices Live, Fiona.
Thank you so much for having me. It's so amazing to see you. And yes,
I
thank you for having me.
know. Oh, we let me see. I interviewed you back in 2018. I think it might have been 2017.
I think
I
it might
don't
have been 2017. Yeah, well, it seems
2017.
too long.
Right, and we could only do audio then. I think we were still kind of fumbling around trying to figure out how to do the overseas, the whole. I didn't know how to do that, but I'm so glad you're here today.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
For those, and she's adorable. For those of you who don't know Fiona, she is. Let me tell you a little bit about her. She is an award-winning vocalist, and she is a pianist, producer, and composer. She's also a member of the Jazz Journalists Association and the BAJ, and is the senior writer for Jazz in Europe and founder of Women in Jazz Media. And that's new. You weren't involved in Women in Jazz Media when I spoke with you last. So
No, I started that just over a year ago.
oh, okay.
So
Well,
yes, that's quite new.
awesome. We'll get to that then. You have 5 albums to your credit. You started recording in 2016. Your first album was A Twist of Blue. And in 2017, you released Just Me. And also Black, White, and a Little Bit of Gray, right?
Yes.
Okay. All in 1 year. Okay. And 2019, you released Fierce and Non-Compliant. And your recent release is Red Flags and High Heels. What a list.
I know. You make me sound like some kind of crazy woman.
No, not at all. You know what? I know how difficult it is to pull that off. I mean, to first of all record an album where you have composed, you've arranged, produced. That's not an easy thing to do. What made you start recording? Because I know you've been in the music business for a long time. So in 2016, you decided to record.
Yeah, well, I mean, I trained in theatre actually, so I'm a musical theatre child. I did dance, drama, and music from a very young age, but worked in a few different areas. But in 2016, I was working in education, so I was head of the British Academy of New Music in London, and I was there for, I think it was about 8 years. And they just reached a point when I just wasn't very happy. There was new people came in to take over the company, and it wasn't where I wanted to be. I got into education to help young people. That was my passion, and the new owners didn't share that passion, and I just decided this wasn't where I wanted to be. So I just left. And sort of dramatically, but not really. I just kind of thought, no, do you know what? I'm not happy here. But I left without a plan. I didn't kind of leave for another job or kind of think I'm going to leave to do this. And for about a month, I didn't really know what I was doing. I was thinking I better look for another job, and I was still doing kind of my session work and kind of bits and bobs. But a colleague of mine that I used to work with at this academy, I bumped into him. I wish I could remember who it was, but I bumped into him about a month after I'd left, and he said, "Oh, I take it you're doing your music now properly." And I was like, "Do you know, yeah, that's what I need to be doing. Now I can do this." So I thought, oh, okay. And I already had some songs that I'd written and recorded. So I thought, well, you know what, let me just release this. And that was Twisted Blue. I thought, let me just release this album while I work on another album, figure out who I am as a jazz artist and kind of what I'm going to do. And it just kind of went crazy from that point. So that's why I started in kind of 2016. I kind of left this normal job, if you like, and started to do music full time.
Okay. Now you have a very unique style. Who inspires you? Who do you pattern yourself after, or just you?
Well, do you know what? It's funny because I think I've been very honoured, I think, to have such an incredibly diverse musical upbringing. So my mum was very much into classical music, and in fact, I was a classically trained pianist and vocalist, but she loved opera. So I had that kind of poured into my head from a very young age. But my dad loved jazz, so he liked old school, so Louis Armstrong, Billie Holiday, Ella Fitzgerald, all the kind of very much the legacy, those incredible artists. But my brother, who's 10 years older than me, at the time, I used to think he was really cool. He's not cool at all, but at the time I was like, he's cool. And he used to listen to rock, and I used to
Mm,
sneak into his bedroom, and he listened to things like Billy Joel, Ricky Lee Jones, Joni Mitchell,
mm,
Kate Bush, all these kind of amazing piano-based, interestingly, mostly singer-songwriters. So that was my very young upbringing. But of course, I was also trained in musical theatre. But then when I became a teenager, what was cool at the time was Whitney Houston, Anita Baker, and I discovered Aretha Franklin. So I had Prince, Stevie Wonder, I mean, all that, my heroes. So I've
mhm.
had this wonderful kind of combination of kind of classical, old school jazz, R&B, soul. I mean, amazing musicians. And I think that's kind of, and I don't deliberately do anything, but I think that's why my music's very hard to kind of put in a box. It's a bit of this, it's a bit of that, because that's just what's in my head, I guess, and my heart.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay, that's a good answer, and I can hear all of that. I can hear all of those influences in your music.
Oh, well, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Now, 2019, the pandemic hit.
Yeah.
You had just released Fierce and Non-Compliant. Like I think February you released Fierce and Non-Compliant in 2019, and they shut down everything in March or April. It was around that time. What did you feel like? I mean, because you can't, you release a project and you can't promote it because everything
Yeah.
was shut down.
Everything was shut down. In London, we had, I think March is when we went into lockdown. And literally 2 days before lockdown, I did a recording session with my bassist, Derek Daly. And we went into this church and just did acoustic. It was just two songs that was just double bass and vocals. And it was literally 2 days before lockdown, and couldn't do anything. And the plan was, I mean, I'd done some London gigs, but the plan was supposed to be to go to Europe, and then beyond, and kind of start touring that album, which of course I couldn't do.
Right.
Um, so yeah, so I had those two videos. So just record them. So like, okay, well that's something I can at least release. So I released those kind of, I think, a month or two after lockdown. And then in August, I think it was, we were released from a sort of lockdown, in that we were allowed to go in the studio. So I know the lockdowns have been different all across the world. So there were no
Hmm.
gigs, there was no live performances, but you were
Right.
allowed to go into a studio as long as you were socially distanced. So I called all my musicians. I'm like, okay, so legally we're allowed to go in the studio, let's do
Hmm.
something. So I booked the studio, and we just spent a day and recorded some live stuff, and it was amazing because none of us had played for months at
Right.
all, and we
Right.
just recorded the session and thought, we did that, and then of course we were locked down again after that, so there was still no gigs. So it's been quite some time. I did a gig, I think October, when I released my recent album. That was the first actual gig that we've done in about 2 years, actually, because of lockdown. So we did some studio
Wow.
stuff, but no live audiences. It was very
Right.
hard.
Yes, it is very hard. The music industry right now is, I mean, first of all, it's changed so much since I spoke to you last. But it just
Mm.
in 3 years, it's changed so much. Where do you see it going in 5 years, say? Like, where do you see your career
Mm.
in 5 years?
It's so hard, isn't it? Because I think for me, one of the things, and I genuinely can't remember when it was. I think maybe it was August of this year. I was asked to take part in a Scottish jazz festival, but it was
Hmm.
online. So it was the first time I'd been asked to appear at this festival, but it was all being live streamed. So I had no audience. So, we went to a venue and we did a set as if it was a live performance.
Hmm.
And we had fun as musicians, but performing to no audience, I personally, and I know we all feel differently, and we do what we have to
Hmm.
do, and obviously we have to do these
Sure.
things, but it's missing something. It's
Of course.
absolutely missing something. And in fact, Ashani, who's one of my backing vocalists and also saxophonist, an incredible young artist, she was being interviewed a few weeks ago, and she was saying it's just that buzz you get from a live audience. I know we can live stream, and it has opened up many incredible things. I mean, don't get me wrong, but
Hmm.
as a performer, I don't see how that can go. I think we will always have live performances. We have to. It's
Yeah.
part of our art form, and I know it's hard, with COVID, and also, we've got things like Brexit, at the moment. So even if we had no
Right.
COVID, traveling abroad is now completely different to how it used to be, and
Hmm.
it's all so many barriers, I think. A huge amount of barriers. But one thing with music and all art form, and especially jazz, is we're about breaking those barriers and finding a
Mm.
way forward. So yeah, I'm one of those annoyingly optimistic people, and I could easily go through a list of problems and challenges. Of
Yeah.
which there are many, but I
Mhm.
do believe, as musicians, as artists, we've got to do our thing, and
Yeah.
audiences want us to do our thing.
Hmm.
It's the the joy, and from a well-being point of view that art and music brings. And you think about COVID and the lockdown, where would we have been if we didn't have films to watch, if we didn't have books to read, if we didn't have music to listen to? This is what's kept us going, hasn't it? Is art.
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
Whether you're a musician or not, this is what has kept us going. So it's vital to everybody. So yeah, we will get there. I don't know how, and but we will get there, and
Yeah.
none of us will have any money. I think that's another
Yeah.
issue with live streaming. Is
Right. Exactly.
because everything's free now, which is wonderful if it's not your work. But of course, as a musician, people don't pay the same amount for live streaming. You're
Uh,
relying on tips, and so there has to be a mindset shift, I think, with the general public about what you get for free and what you should get for free.
right.
But again, that's another
That's
conversation.
always, yeah, that's always been a problem, right? With musicians, trying to make a living and people thinking, oh, you're just playing an instrument or you're just going to sing a song. So why do
Yeah, yeah. Oh, don't.
why,
Yeah.
why should you get paid so much? Or, that is a problem. So
It,
that's,
it is, yeah. I mean,
mhm,
and I think one of the challenges is the value people place on art. Because if you speak to someone, I'm talking about non-musicians, they will
mhm,
place high value on art. They will understand the importance of art, what it does from all different angles, and quite often the training involved. But when you say, "Well, put your money where your mouth is," that's a whole different ballgame.
yeah,
When
right.
you actually say, well, value that equals, you say, all that training, the importance it has, then
Mhm,
that does equate financially, and must
right.
do. But
Mhm,
but yeah, sorry, that's another.
yeah.
I'll go
That's,
off
yeah,
on
that's
one
a
and talk about that.
So let's talk about your process because you write the lyrics, you compose all do you arrange all of the parts
I
for
do.
all of the parts? Because
I
you
do,
have,
yeah.
yeah, yeah, okay, all right. And you produce as well. You produce your albums. Now, do you think you will ever want to be a part of a label? Is that a goal or is it
Well,
better
no,
to be independent?
Well, do you know what? I think I'm enjoying my independence. And I think the only reason I didn't intend to be a producer, these are just my songs. And I start off me and the piano, and you can't see it, but it's kind of my piano's over there. And I
Mhm.
just sit, and I write at the piano, and then it escalates from that. And I kind of write out, the brass parts and all the bits that come with it. And we go into the studio. It's just kind of this holistic flavor, if you like, to all the work that I do, and which means, if it's rubbish, then that's my fault. I
Mm.
think it's an accountability thing for me as well, and it's kind of
Mhm.
having that's the whole shape of it. So I'm very happy having. Makes me sound like a control freak, but I don't think I am.
No. Of
but
course
it,
not.
but I think it's because when I first start writing, I've got a very specific sound in my head. I know how I want it to sound, and also the end product. It's just
Right.
me. I don't want to pretend to be something I'm not. So I
Mhm.
I think I like that control, and also I think, again, I mean, going back to what you were saying about how the industry changes. What would a label do that I can't do
Mhm.
myself at the moment? And I think, the answer to that is probably just from a marketing and promotion point of view, that they would have more money than me. A
Exactly.
massive label, for example, would have far more resources than I have. but apart from that, to be honest, I'm quite happy being an independent artist at the moment.
Yeah, you're making a living, so can't
Well,
complain. You're talking to me today. You're not starving. You're not on the street.
It's true, but I think it's there's part, especially as a woman, I think,
It's hard.
and I think that's key. And there's
Mhm.
many people I've spoken to, and
Mhm.
having control of your art, and from
Mhm.
an image point of view, your music, and that means that the royalties and kind of that business side of things, which is
Right.
something I've learned over the past kind of 4 or 5 years. But I think it's really important to have control of your art form.
Mhm. Now, what part do you like best?
Oh, that's tricky, I think, because the thing when I'm writing, it's very solitary because it's just me and my piano, and it's almost like therapy because I just write what's in my head, So if my heart's just been broken and I'm kind of distraught, then that's the kind of song I will, write. But also if I'm feeling a bit feisty and kind of ready to take on the world, then that's the kind of song I will write. But it is quite a solitary kind of therapy session, if you like. But then the next stage is when I bring my musicians in. And I love that. I love from kind of having it just me, vocals and piano, to suddenly getting the drum kit in, getting the guitar in, and getting the bass in. But I think for me, I particularly like the brass. And each album, I've gone bigger and bigger. And this last album, I've got some big brass sections, but it's actually
Mhm.
only two players. So I have Dave Bower on trumpet, and Lauren Higgle on saxophone, but we layer it. So I write kind of, I don't know, 10 or 11 different brass parts, and then we record them one by one, and then we layer them up. And I just love that because I could have this brass in my head and then to suddenly hear that realized. So I
Right.
love that part. I don't think I could choose because they all mean different things to
Yeah.
me.
Right.
I think,
I can see you light up. You lit up, and you were like, "Oh well."
yeah, I do. It all has
It's,
different flavors, and I get something
yeah.
different, and it's different parts of I work with incredible people. I mean, truly,
Mhm.
that and they make it. And as I say, my bassist and my drummer, because we quite often start with drum and bass. I get that together first, and
Mhm.
the characters that these guys have is just incredible, and
Right.
everybody's different personalities that come in at different stages. So yeah, I don't think I
Yeah.
could choose one.
So you hear all of the when you are writing, you hear all of the parts. Like you hear, you hear the horn. You hear all of that.
I do, yeah, and
That's
I have to
it's just
say, because when I'm writing, I don't listen to any other music
okay.
because I have so much going on in my head. So literally, I might start, as I say, it might just be a few chords and a lyric line, and then at the same time, I'll have like a little trumpet part that's kind of just singing around in my
Oh
head, and
wow.
then I've got like a harmony on top of that. So I have all this stuff going on in my head, and it doesn't go away until it's recorded. So yeah, so I kind of have to not listen to any other music at all until this stuff has gone out. And then as soon as I've recorded, then I can listen to music again. But yeah,
Yeah.
there's a lot going on in my head, I have to say.
So who are you listening to now? Who's on your playlist?
Oh gosh, I've got loads because obviously I work as a journalist as well. So I've got
Right.
loads and loads of albums that I'm supposed to be reviewing and catching up on.
Uh,
At the moment I'm a bit obsessed with China Moses. Um,
I like
oh,
China. Dee Dee Bridgewater's daughter, right?
oh yes.
She
Oh
sounds a
my
lot like her.
Oh, but
But
I think what I love about China is it's kind of jazz with a bit of blues, with a bit of soul,
yeah.
but she's that incredible, fierce role model that kind of you don't mess with,
Hmm.
and I love that. So yeah,
Yeah.
I'm listening to a lot of China Moses at the moment.
Oh, awesome. Oh, I said it. I did it. That's the first time, though, wasn't it?
Oh, that's okay.
It was my
I
first
think
awesome.
that's fine. We're allowed
But
one.
it is awesome. That's great. Uh, okay. Um, let's talk about women in jazz
Hmm.
uh, and how that started. What made you even want to add something else to your plate?
Okay, well, so I work as a journalist as well, and that came, I didn't intend, which is quite often with my life. Things just happen, and I'm very much a go with the flow.
Hmm.
I don't really plan things. I'm just like, okay, well, this opportunity has appeared, I'll give it a go. So I ended up as a journalist because Jazz in Europe, who I work for, asked me to do some reviews. And I said at the time that, I've not done anything like this before. So I kind of ended up in that world, but very quickly realized that there weren't many women in that world. So looking at a lot of the major jazz publications across the world, so obviously not just UK, we're talking Europe, we're talking America, there's very male jazz journalists. And this has always been the case, and it's always been a concern for me. But the day, and a year and a bit ago, so we're just over a year ago, on this particular day, I was looking at this publication, and I won't say who it was, but I was looking at this page, and it had all of the writers, and it had photos of all the writers, which is rare. Normally, you have to actually search to see who wrote these articles. They had all these photos, and there was about 52 photos, and I was like, wow, that's an impressive lineup of writers. But as I'm looking, I'm like, oh, hang on. Where are the women? And I'm literally looking through this kind of this page online, and there were 2 women, and everyone was white. Everyone was white. There was 2 women. Everyone, and I just on that day, I'm like, do you know what? I've had enough of this. I mean, I see it all the time, but I think that visual for me just kind of got to me, and I'm like, this is not good. I thought, okay, where are the female journalists? I'll start a Facebook page. So I very simply just thought, I'm just going to, start a Facebook page, get a community group together, and see who's out there. And I was thinking, what am I going to call it? I was like, well, it's women in jazz, but it's not, it's also the journalists, the photographers, kind of, the behind the scenes. So I just called it Women in Jazz Media. And it was just off the top of my head. And then the very next day, I had someone contact me, kind of a direct message on this page. It's just the next day, a jazz journalist in China. And a woman, and she said, oh my goodness, I've been looking for something like this for years. I've been writing about jazz in China for the past 8 years. I don't know any other women that do it.
Wow.
And I was like, I was kind of like, oh, okay, well, that's huge. And then a few days later, I had a similar email from a writer in Spain. And she was basically saying that in Spain, they're not great with women. They don't like us doing things. We still have big barriers here. And this kind of made me think, okay, a simple Facebook page is not enough. Something needs to happen. So I got a mission statement together. I put a call out for a team, formed this organization, which it's been incredibly overwhelming in an amazing way. Because I think everyone's been so responsive and to kind of what we're trying to do. And ultimately the aim is that we look at a beautifully, diverse and gender balanced jazz industry. And that's in front of the stage. So that's, instrumentalists, vocalists, as well as photographers and journalists. So that's our mission. The dream is that we see proper equality, proper diversity. So that's kind of, I could talk about that one for ages, but that's how it started.
No, that's good. And you've interviewed Dee Dee Bridgewater, Terry Lynn Carrington, and Camille Thurman, some of my favorites. So
there's so many incredible women out there, so many. But how often do we see them actually on the front covers of magazines? There's still not many women that you see on the front covers of magazines, and also female photographers. How often do we know about jazz female photographers? So, although we have come a way, there is still an awful lot of work to be done.
Right. Well, I do not want to keep you too much longer. I do want to see what's happening in your life now. You got some gigs coming up, or first of all, what are the COVID precautions for gigs now?
Okay, so so we're it's tricky because we're back open, and we're allowed to have gigs, and there aren't any certainly with jazz there aren't any barriers. For some big events, some venues are saying you have to be vaccinated, so you have to have a COVID pass, but at the moment that's down to the venues. There is no directive that everybody has to have it. So what you have is a lot of the big venues are saying that you have to be double vaccinated and so on. But of course jazz is a slightly different ball game. They're smaller venues. It's a bit different to the big stadiums. So different venues are taking it differently. So some have got, you have to wear masks if you're in. Some don't say that. They just advise organise it. It's a
Mm.
bit tricky, but we are officially open. But what
Mhm.
we're finding is that people aren't coming out quite so much. So I've
Mm.
been to some gigs where it's been, you walk in and it's packed, no one's wearing a mask, it's as if COVID wasn't here. And
Right.
then the next day you go to a gig and there's barely anyone there, and there's maybe 5 people fully masked up, clearly looking like they wish they weren't there.
Like,
You
I should have
know,
seen it. Yeah.
yeah, so
Yeah.
it's this weird combination at the moment. So some jazz festivals have been cancelled because of
Mm.
concerns about COVID. So yeah, it's a bit tricky. I've had a few gigs. So I had my last gig actually was a sellout. I was really worried, I'll be honest, because I think that's
Mhm.
part of the problem on artists is even if the venue is open, with COVID, that then the worry is, is anyone going to turn up?
Right.
Is anyone going to buy tickets? So
Right.
I have to say, with my last kind of, I've had 2 gigs recently. One was my album launch,
Mhm.
and the other one was just kind of a normal gig. But I was really worried. I was like, oh my god, no one's going to come out to see me for
Right.
whatever reason. But
Mhm.
so I was hugely surprised that it was actually sold out. So I was thrilled with that. So I can say my last gig was sold out. Whether my next one will be, I don't know, because as I say, crowds are kind of not coming out quite so much. But yes, I've got a few gigs lined up. I'm working
Okay.
on a little acoustic album.
Okay,
Uh,
that's what's next. That's what I was
yes,
gonna ask you. That's what's
yes,
an acoustic album. Okay.
yeah.
Oh, I'll be glad to hear that. That should be interesting. Who are you working with?
Well, it's
Okay.
just going to be, well, at the moment in my head, it's it's guitar, piano, and vocal with a
Okay.
little bit of muted trumpet every now and again. With my
Oh,
last album, I went to town a bit with trumpet, and I just love the sound of a muted trumpet.
mhm.
So
Me
on
too.
a few of the songs, I'm going to pop a bit of muted trumpet, but I very much want to keep it kind of no more than four, very kind of acoustic feel. In contrast to my last album, which kind of had a lot of big band stuff. So
Mhm.
yes, I'm writing again because apparently I can't sit still.
Yeah, that is a good thing. That's a good thing. Um, do you think you'll ever make it over the water? You
I'm
think
desperate to.
to
Well,
admit?
this. Oh, I'm desperate to, and this is
Yeah.
the thing with
When
COVID.
when
So my
COVID's gone.
plan, yeah, because my plan before with the lockdown was to tour Europe and then come to America and Canada,
Um,
because I've got quite a big fan base in Canada in particular, and it's growing
oh,
in the States.
mhm.
But that was my plan. So as soon as I'm allowed to, then absolutely, I will be there in a flash.
All right. Well, we'll welcome you.
Thank you.
I'm playing your music on my radio show,
Thank you
and
so much.
yes, and I'm so thankful that you just took a little bit of your time because I know it's like midnight there, and you're
It is.
probably yeah, you're probably ready to go to bed. But I won't hold you. Tell everybody how they can contact you. Your website. You're on social media. Let everybody
Yeah,
know.
I'm everywhere. Yeah, my website is just fionaross.co.uk. But if you type in Fiona Ross Jazz on Google, then all my stuff comes up. So yes, I'm
Okay.
not hard to find.
Yeah, and your music is available for purchase on iTunes, Bandcamp, and Amazon Music, and you can listen, of course, on Spotify, Apple Music, and YouTube. She is all over the place for sure. So go buy her music. That's what I say. Go buy. You can buy the music on your website too, right?
Yes, you can. Yes,
Yeah. Okay.
yes.
That's the best. That's the best place to get it. Okay, well, again, thank you. We've been, to let everyone know, we've been chatting with Fiona Ross, and my name is Kelly Campbell, and I want to thank you, everyone, for tuning in. And if you like this video, give it a thumbs up, okay? Leave a comment, and then subscribe to the channel. And we will talk to you soon, Fiona. Have a good year.
Thank you so much. Honestly,
All right,
thank you for all you do, and thank you for having me.
awesome. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Bye bye.